Welcome into it. This is the Rocky Top Rewind here on a Sunday evening. I'm Eric Kane. That is Brent Hubbs, Volquest.com. And of course, right here on our YouTube page, just search Volquest. Like this video, helping to get to 500 likes. Would appreciate that a whole lot. You know, it's called the Rocky Top Rewind, Brent, but not a whole lot of Tennessee news over the weekend, obviously, with the off week, but plenty of action around college football, around the SEC, and that LSU game is looming large here coming up this weekend. Got a fun show coming up real quick. Jonathan Heffney, former Vol, 8:15. We'll have Shea Dixon of the Bengal Tiger. That's the On Three affiliate for LSU of On Three. He's going to join us at 8:30, and then Austin Price at 8:45. Going to be a fun hour and plenty to talk about, Brent Hubbs.
Yeah, it's check writing season in college football, right? But for those who are succeeding and winning, the ADs are preparing to write checks for extensions and raises because that's what you got to do. And it's an early buyout check writing season with 5 Power 5 coaches now having been fired. Paul Chryst, the latest from Wisconsin. Colorado making a change today as well. Of course, Nebraska's already made a change. Lots of early movement, not a lot of patience going on in the world of college athletics and college football right now, but certainly an interesting Saturday and a really interesting Saturday in the SEC. We don't know about Bryce Young. Doesn't appear like that's going to be anything necessarily long term, as was speculated by all the national people and CBS on Saturday in the middle of that game. But interesting game for Alabama. And then obviously that's 2 weeks in a row for Georgia where they haven't had it. Now, I think they can get it back. I'm not one of those who thinks Georgia has a mountain of problems, but they did not have their edge against Missouri, and they didn't have it against Kent State either. And then Ole Miss finding a way to win at home against Kentucky, a rallying win for LSU, and all kinds of problems at Texas A&M, it looks like. So pretty interesting overall weekend in the SEC. And a pretty interesting weekend around college football. I didn't see Georgia Tech winning at Pittsburgh last night. So it's week to week. I mean, Kirby Smart's right. It's not easy to win. I don't care where you're at. And we certainly saw that this weekend.
No, I mean it's why we love college football. Yeah, I said earlier today on a show I joined, you got to embrace the weird. You know, as college football fans, you love the weirdness. Now, when your team's out there playing, you can't just be totally stress free. But you know, for Vol fans, it was just a stress free weekend of watching college football. Get a little weird at times, and that's what it's all about. You mentioned some of the coaches who are no longer, at the helm anymore, as college football has no patience. At the time of this, Brian Harsin is still at the helm over at Auburn, blowing another double-digit lead. Of course, Tennessee's next opponent is LSU. I know we're going to get into that here some tonight and, of course, throughout the week. But leading 17-0 at one point, LSU does come back. And Jaden Daniels, the quarterback, kind of banged his knee, it sounds like, from Brian Kelly on another knee. And looks like he's going to be okay. I would, as of right now, and we'll get some more from Shay Dixon, later in the show, but looks like he was probably going to be available. But nonetheless, that's just one of those games where looked like Auburn was in control, looked like they had that game, and then LSU came back and is going to be obviously a formidable opponent for Tennessee this weekend.
Yeah, no doubt. A couple of interesting decisions, I thought, in that Auburn game that a lot of Auburn fans are questioning today. Brian Harsin going for it on 4th and 10. When his defense was playing really well, it didn't pin LSU back. So that was kind of bizarre on that decision there. I thought the trick play in the red zone was probably unnecessary with the way the offense was playing. You can second guess a lot of things, but those were two big plays in the game. And then you look at Missouri, false start at the 1-yard line cost them 4 points. And then they gave up the lead. And when they gave up the lead, they gave up the game. They were done. 3 bizarre play calls on that series with 4 minutes to go when they had run it so well against Georgia. To drop back and throw it 3 times with a young quarterback felt like a little bit of a give up or a little bit of a panic move, I guess is the better way to say. So, again, it's college. I don't know how else to say. It's college football. I mean, Kentucky's got to win, but Will Levis doesn't let the offense get set, Eric. And as a result, Kentucky loses. I know he fumbled on the next play, but if he waits a half a second on Barryon Brown to line up, that's a touchdown, and that's basically a walk-off for Kentucky. They're in the top 10 today, undefeated, and it's Ole Miss who takes a tumble. So 1 to 2, 3 plays are the difference in a ball game, and that's the challenge that coaches are dealing with every week to try to get their teams to not have those mess ups and to be at their best each and every week, which is not easy to do.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, a couple of costly mistakes there by Will Levis, late in that football game to where you're exactly right. I mean, I think Kentucky was ranked, 7th in the AP last week. And If they're able to hold on there, they're probably moving up a spot or so, and Ole Miss is taking a tumble. But now it's with the latest AP Week 6 college football rankings coming out, Alabama replaces Georgia at the top, and I'm with you. I'm not worried about Georgia. I think that they're gonna be able to come back. There's just too much talent, too much depth, so much experience on that roster, but they have not looked good the last 2 weeks, no doubt about it. But it's Alabama at 1, Georgia at 2. Now, Tennessee is the third highest ranked team in the SEC, staying put at number 8. You have Ole Miss climbing to number 9, Kentucky falling back to number 13, Mississippi State and LSU get in at 23 and 25, respectively. But I watched a lot of that Ole Miss Kentucky game, the mistakes by Levis there at the end. Missed some because of the engagement I had Saturday night of Georgia and Missouri, but I had to go back and get caught up on that. But one game that we haven't spoke on yet, Alabama and Arkansas. Arkansas 2 years in a row, it's crept inside the top 10. It's a solid football program. I think Sam Pittman's doing a great job, but it comes crashing back down to reality really quickly. I think Alabama shows you that, of course, your quarterback, your Heisman Trophy winning guy, and Bryce Young goes out, you roll in the next guy, and they expand on that lead late in that football game, and they run out of there 49-26. I think Alabama's going to be okay. But again, just another example of depth and experience behind some of those starters that kind of prevail in the end. And I think Alabama will be okay, much like Georgia will as well.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Arkansas's lack of speed on defense showed up, I thought, big time, and not just in the long runs. I know everybody's going to say, well, yeah, I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs went 70-plus yards twice, in the fourth quarter to put that game away. But when Bryce Young was on the field, I mean, Arkansas secondary had a hard time keeping guys in front of them. Their linebackers had a hard time in some coverage stuff, and I thought their lack of speed defensively reared its head in that game. So, and I think Alabama's a team that's getting better. I think those young receivers are starting to figure it out. We had Jesse Simonton on the Rocky Top Rewind 3 weeks ago, I guess, 4 weeks ago. One of the things we were talking about with Alabama is did not feel like they had Waddle and those types of players, Jerry Jeudy and all those things. I'm not sure that they've got Jamison Williams, all those guys. I keep rattling them off. I'm not sure that they've got one of those right now, but those young guys are starting to get better and are starting to emerge. And I think that's not good news for teams on their schedule down the stretch, provided that Bryce Young gets back. So I think they're going to be okay. I think Georgia's going to be okay. But, I mean, hey, hats off to Missouri for showing up.
Yeah.
Their defensive line played really well. That was, I mean, can they put it together and build off that, or is that one of those deals that breaks their heart? We're going to find out kind of moving forward, but nobody saw that performance from Missouri coming. And I give Kirby Smart credit. He said post-game, we got knocked in the mouth. I mean, we got hit in the mouth and weren't really ready for it. And I think that's a credit to what Missouri's got in their defensive front. I thought Missouri was not very good, Eric, and I still don't think they're really good, but they competed in a way that I did not expect them to compete against Georgia on Saturday night.
I just think it goes to show you that, I know that movie any given Sunday or whatever, but like on every Saturday, especially at this level of football in the Southeastern Conference, if you don't come ready to play, I mean, there are teams with players who are good enough, who are there for a reason, that will do exactly that. They will punch you in the mouth. And if you make another mistake, maybe they will win that football game. Again, Georgia able to win because they have better players. They have more depth. They made less mistakes in the end, and that's what good teams do. I just can't get over, and I know it's 1 year to the next, but man, Missouri's defense was so bad last year. I mean, historically, was just so awful. And again, they're not world beaters or anything, but the turnaround there, especially in a game like this, is just so impressive there for Eli Drinkwitz. Mississippi State.
I'd tell you what's interesting about Missouri right quick before we get to Mississippi State. Their safeties were coming downhill so hard last night in that game, in the run game, that I'm really surprised Georgia couldn't take more advantage of it, throwing over their head. Georgia's got to get some receivers healthy because they are not a stretch the field team right now at the receiver position. Obviously, Brock Bowers is a really good player, but you go and look at that Missouri team, man, those safeties were downhill, just flying to the football with really no regard for anything over their head, which was a little bit surprising that Georgia couldn't throw it any more over their head than what they did. And so we'll see where Georgia's passing game develops. Stetson Bennett clearly did not have his best night last night, but neither did Jimbo Fisher, right? That's where you're going next.
Yeah, and I want to get to some questions here in just a moment before we get to Jonathan Heffney, but Mississippi State 42-24 over Texas A&M. And I mean, A&M's got their struggles. They can't figure out a quarterback. Obviously rolled with Max Johnson a little bit, but I think it's just another example of you have a veteran-led team with a quarterback that's played a lot and is a good quarterback. Don't get me wrong. If you got a quarterback in this league, you can win a lot of football games. Texas A&M from top to bottom is a better football team than Mississippi State, but State rolled them. And again, Will Rogers, 350 yards passing, 3-4 touchdowns, just had a typical Will Rogers type game. I could see Mississippi State winning that game. Of course, I believe they opened as favorites at home in the football game, but I didn't see them winning by nearly 20 points.
No, I didn't either. And again, I mean, if you could score a little bit, A&M's in trouble because they can't score right now, which puts a lot of pressure on them. How about the shade thrown by a couple of coaches in the state of Mississippi this week? We'll get to Lane Kiffin's shade in a second, but how about the shade that my man, the pirate Mike Leach threw out there after the game when asked why he had so much success against Jimbo Fisher, and he said basically it's not anything I've done. They line up and rush three all the time. You know what they're going to do every play. It's not real hard. I mean, what a slap at the end of that game or in the post game press conference by Mike Leach, and of course Lane Kiffin fires off with praise for his defense by reminding everyone that they shut down the top pick of the draft and saying on television afterwards. That they blitzed because that's they said they welcomed the blitz, so they went ahead and blitzed and saw what happened. So clearly some things the offensive coordinators said from Kentucky, Ole Miss used to their advantage or used to their locker room fodder on defense, and ultimately it paid off to them. But with State, you're good enough at quarterback. They're salty on defense. I was a little surprised State gave the game away to LSU the way they did. I thought that was a game that I thought Mississippi State could win. But when you look at the SEC overall, you look at the East, and you think right now that Georgia and Tennessee are probably, Georgia's 1, Tennessee's probably 2 with where things are. But it's a little more muddled in the East because of better quarterback play, right? I mean, you look at Florida. If Anthony Richardson plays well, they can beat some teams. If Will Levis plays well, Kentucky can beat teams. Mm-hmm. Both of them are talented enough to beat teams. You flip it over to the West, and boy, there's just not a lot of great quarterback play coming out of the West right now. You got Bryce Young, Alabama's clearly the best team. After that, I mean, is Mississippi State the best team? Is Ole Miss the second best team? Who's number 2 in the West? And it's hard to figure out because you've got some offenses in the Western Division that just doesn't have great quarterback play, and it limits them. I don't think KJ Jefferson's playing very well for Arkansas right now. I thought Jackson Dart and Ole Miss's quarterback play was spotty. It was pretty good at times, and at other times it wasn't much. Obviously, Auburn's got quarterback issues. LSU's still trying to figure it out. Texas A&M cannot figure it out. Rogers is the second best quarterback in the West, but I don't know that Mississippi State's the second best team in the West.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. I mean, KJ Jefferson's not playing to his best, but he's obviously, up there in terms of quarterback play in the SEC and in particular the SEC West. But who's the quarterback of the week at Auburn? Ashford threw for over 300 yards against Missouri or against LSU.
But missed a half dozen really easy throws. And Jefferson, I thought, missed some throws. I don't think he's played particularly well. I mean, it looks like he's not adjusted to life without Burks and some of those big play guys that they've had a little bit at Arkansas, which kind of surprises me a little bit there. The Rogers kid is, I mean, in that system with Mike Leach, it seems to work very well for him. A&M's got no answer for what they're doing at the quarterback position. And then, I think Daniels is the guy at LSU. If he stays healthy, the question is just how healthy is he?
Yeah. And again, when you bang knees like that, I mean, that's tough. I mean, that's really challenging. I do want to go to a question here before we get into Jonathan Heffney from Chris Joyner, saying that Tennessee needs to play press man coverage with the corners, bring the house after the quarterback all night long, saying Daniels won't beat you with his arm. He doesn't have a lot of time. That's something that you asked Josh Heupel, and something we've continued to kind of bring up in some press conferences on Monday about bailing out at the cornerback, playing a lot of cushion back there. Do you follow the script of what Tennessee did against Pitt this week with LSU? And we'll touch on this throughout the week, but tighten things up, bring the house, make them beat you with your arm, because Daniels, he obviously can run, but he's not an Anthony Richardson type threat, in my opinion.
No, I mean, I don't think he's that good of a runner, but you better play in your run lanes, because if you let one bust out on you, I mean, he did it to Florida State to get him in a position to have a chance to win that football game. He made enough plays with his feet against Auburn to move the sticks and to keep drives alive. So I think that you got to come get him and put some pressure on him and try to collapse that pocket down. But you better squeeze him and not let him get outside, and give up contained, because he will make you pay with his legs. Now Nussmeier, if that's the direction they go, I think that's the straight up pit plan, right? I mean, I think you're coming after him because he's not moving. But if it's Daniels, you got to at least respect his wheels, because he will make you pay with them. I don't think he wants to run a ton, but I think he knows that when they got to have a play, he's got to go run it, and he's not afraid to do that.
Well, a guy that has played a whole lot of different techniques in the secondary, blitzing, staying back, press man, whatever the case may be, at Tennessee, the National Football League, and the CFL. Jonathan Heffney, former Vol, is going to join us next, right here on the Rocky Top Rewind. We'll go back into the Rocky Top Rewind here at Volquest every Sunday night from 8 until 9. It's a live YouTube show where, of course, you can interact with us, myself, Eric Kane, Brent Hubbs, and now we bring on a former Vol, Jonathan Heffney. Jonathan, thanks so much for joining the show.
What's going on? How y'all doing? Appreciate y'all having me.
Hey, by the way,
man, appreciate you being here. And just right out of the gate, you were at the Florida game. You were home, seeing that crowd, seeing that win. How great was it to be back inside Neyland Stadium?
That was electric, man. I I really had no words for it, just because we was around all the guys and everybody planning to come in that weekend, and we just wanted to show love. And man, I had a ball, man. That was like my second time coming back to Knoxville. I was at the first game, but I ain't really moving around as much. But to be there, man, the crowd, the atmosphere, how the guys played, man, they fought their ass off, and I mean, I was proud of them, man. I bleed orange. I got the tattoo on me, so. Anything they do, for years I've been screaming Tennessee. So I'm just happy to see them on top.
And for the record, Jonathan Heffney is the pride of Rock Hill, South Carolina, not Chris Lowe, for those wondering back at home, right, Jay Heffney? Hey, listen, man, it's good to see you. I'm glad you're doing well. What is your take on the Tennessee defense? You mentioned you've seen them play twice. You're a secondary guy. You've played man, you've played zone, you've played a bunch of different ways. What do you see particularly out of Tennessee's corners? What would you like to see more out of Tennessee's corners moving forward for this defense to grow?
I mean, I think the secondary is solid, man. They got some big corners out there that's really making plays. But like I was a big fan of the defensive line, and that defensive line looked really good to me, man. Some of them guys coming off the edge, they're making big plays. And I think that helps out the secondary. So, if we can keep that going, we can keep the linebackers, involved and engaged and keep them flying to the ball. I think the secondary would be good because it all starts up front.
For that, to follow up on that, Jonathan, I mean, when you played with some good defensive lines during your time at Tennessee, how much more aggressive did you feel like you could play in terms of not maybe worried about a long developing route or even a deep ball if you knew a blitz was coming or whatever Chief had dialed up? Did it allow you to play more aggressive when you had a defensive line you believed in front of you?
I mean, I think it helps because the ball has to come out fast, especially if we're getting pressure to the quarterback. He might send when we was there, Chief would send Mayo, and we had that D line, and the ball coming out in 2 seconds, maybe under, so you can really sit on the route. But I feel like most of the time Chief had us at man to man.
Yeah, he wouldn't play in a bunch of zone. He wanted to press it up and bring a little A-gap blitz, right? Little bear Mike shoot from Coach Chavis was what was coming, right?
All the time.
Absolutely all the time. The game's different though than when you played, Jonathan, with the emergence of the RPO game, with the emergence of mobile quarterbacks, more willing to use their feet than you saw when you played. There was some of that when you were playing, but it's different now. How much harder do you think the cornerback position is now in the college game than it was when you played? Or is it that much different?
I mean, I don't think it's much different. To me, I feel like DBs are the best athletes on the field because they don't know where the ball is going. You checking the man to man, you're pretty much watching hips. And like my brother-in-law was saying the other day, like you guys have the hardest job because you don't know what's going on. So I think it's still pretty much the same. You got a whole lot more, I guess, the offensive coordinators that's trying to trick their eyes. So if they're in the zone, it's more of that going on. You never really know what's really going to happen. So I mean, you just to me, if you're a DB and you're playing college ball right now, you should love to play man to man because you can lock in and let everything else happen for itself.
Jonathan, is that why, and I say this with respect, okay, is that why DBs are the most confident guys out there on the field, the ones that are always talking smack, always celebrating after every play? Because of what you just said, you have to be the best athlete on the field because you're already at a disadvantage. You have the toughest job most of the time. Mm-hmm. Is that where that confidence comes from?
I think so. I mean, for me, I don't think I found my confidence until like my sophomore year in college. Like everything else I was just out. I felt like my freshman year, I was just out there playing and running around with my head cut off. But like once you find that confidence, I think when I got to like the CFL, that's when I turned into a whole different person and I became a madman. So like, I feel like you have to be a madman now to play, DB and to really have that swagger. It's the next play. You might get beat for a 10-yard out. Okay, well, you come back the next play, you might get a pick six. So that's what I'm looking for. Like, and that's what I like to see in the DBs, how much fight they have, how much willingness to tackle, because I love a DB that's going to make a tackle and make a stop and set a play up for like a 3rd and 4. So that's where I see it at.
Another question kind of on confidence. When you have cornerbacks playing up press, and they might not be in man, maybe they're bailing a little bit, but oftentimes we see cornerbacks will stay with the receiver before bailing out, maybe 5-10 yards down the field. Some will bail out, quicker and longer, and the others will stay with the receiver a little bit more. Is that a confidence thing? I know sometimes it's coaching and everything, but just in terms of bailing out, giving as much cushion as you are, is that one thing to where when you're kind of feeling yourself, when things are going well, you'll hang around a little bit longer, but if something bad happens, you want to get back to make sure you keep everything in front of you? I
feel like if you see, it depends on what the schemes are too. Like if you see guys like bailing out, it could be cover 3, or it could be, they may not be comfortable on that play. But the ones that you see pressing up all the time and that's in somebody's face all the time, them the ones that mostly has all of the swagger and that's not scared to get beat. And probably they can run the 4.3s too.
Jonathan, you mentioned it took you to your sophomore year in college to kind of get some confidence and get comfortable. I mean, that surprises me a little bit because you played right out of the gate. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, you started every game but one your freshman or your first year at Tennessee once you came from prep school.
Yeah.
What was the challenge? What was the adjustment? And do you think the corner position is the hardest adjustment to make from high school to college, or even from prep school to college, because of how much more sophisticated offenses are at the college level compared to high school?
I could say, like, for me in high school, it was nothing. Like, by the time my senior year hit, I hadn't started like 45 games, so I felt like I was the old guy. I know one coach from Heffney was saying, man, it seemed like you've been here for like 5-6 years. So, coming from prep school, I had a lot of confidence. And I think the Florida game kind of broke my confidence because I got beat for like 80-yard touchdown. But as the season went on, some of the older guys, they kind of brought me along and they helped me out. And it seemed like that once we got to the meat of the schedule, I was really confident in what I was doing. I ran a punt back my first game, and they called it. And I looked at the video with my nephew the other day, and I don't remember running that at all. No memory. So, it was a blessing just to be at Tennessee, and then to see 100,000. So, like when y'all was asking me earlier about how it felt like, I felt like it was 10 times better than when I was there. We had 116,000 in 2004, and I felt like that atmosphere was way better.
Is that because you weren't? I mean, you were just soaking it in, whereas a player, you got to block it out the best you can. I mean, you got a job to do. Is that, you think that's why it felt different for you?
As a player, everybody was a blur. I seen nothing as a player. Like, I could see everything at the game, and we had a little bit of drinks involved, so I was feeling myself too. So I had a good time. Like, I had a good time, but I kept on saying, all I got to do is get my nephew down here. You know what I mean? So it's just, it's nothing like Tennessee, and my daughter's down in Knoxville. So I love to be there, and that's my second home.
All right, I gotta ask you this one. It may be a blur to you, but do you remember the 2005 trip to Baton Rouge, the overtime win? You had the interception and started that second half comeback. But do you remember everything leading up to that game and how bizarre? I mean, how confused were you guys during the week on where the game was playing, what you were doing? I mean, you end up traveling day of. I mean, it's one of the crazier, just getting to the game, and then the game itself was crazy. What do you remember about that week in that game, Jonathan?
I remember, we was getting closer to the game, all everything that happened. We ended up staying in the hotel. So we stayed in the hotel in Knoxville, I think, for like a day or so. And then we ended up flying there. And I mean, for me, pretty much before the game, that was a blur because, I ended up finding out that I was having a kid that same week. So everything then was a blur for me. But like just leading up to the game, we didn't know what we was going to do, if we was going to play the game or not play the game. And then once we got there, it was on for the game. And I remember just walking out on that stadium. That was my first time playing LSU, first time playing. And, they was coming off of, I think, the national championship or something, or like a year or two before. So, that was big time. And you hearing all the names, and they got the tiger on the side right when you walk out. So, like, it was crazy. Like, the first half, how they jumped out there on us. And it was like everything, the momentum was all with them. And then it all shifted. It just shifted on the dime in that second half. And I ended up making a play on Jamarcus Russell, which is crazy to me, a number 1 overall pick. So, like, I ended up making a play on him and taking the ball, back to the 5. I got a picture of it in my garage where I was diving in the end zone and trying to get in the end zone, ended up landing on the 5. I think I jumped from like the 7. and just remember that. And I remember getting up and Kevin Simon knocking me back down. And the guys just getting hype. I'm running on the sideline, throwing up my Rock Hill sign so all my people back home can see me. And, I mean, it was just an incredible game for us to make that comeback. And all the guys from Louisiana, we always celebrated. We took the Tennessee pole and stuck it in the ground, the guys from Louisiana, and getting back to Knoxville, and everybody was still up partying with us when we got back home. Like, that was crazy. That was a crazy night.
Hey, Jonathan, there's been change. There's been quite a few changes since you left Tennessee as a player.
Oh, yeah.
A couple different coaches, different administrations. Josh Heupel coming in with Danny White. Tennessee turning the tide a little bit last year and off to a 4-0 start this year. What do you like about this regime, this coaching staff, the way they play football, and how difficult, as a bonus real quick, how difficult would it have been to have played cornerback or safety against an offense like Josh Heupel?
Oh man, I watched that offense, and I'm so impressed because it seemed like every 3, 4, 5 seconds they are right back to the next play. It's like a track meet. It's a legit track meet, and I see that as in the CFL too, because CFL was like a track meet, 3 downs. Everything was going super fast for me, and I only can imagine how like the guys have to be in shape. The ones that's not playing can't be in shape, or other guys are just that better. But how they run their schemes, man, and how their offense is going, they giving a good mix of run and pass. Our quarterback is playing lights out. He's from North Carolina, so I give love to him because it's North Carolina and South Carolina, right? He's from North Carolina, right?
Yep, he is.
Yeah. I remember hearing that. So, I love the guys from North Carolina, South Carolina, but everything that the guys are doing right now, man, they're bringing in recruits, man. They're out there recruiting hard. They want to win. It seems like it's no nonsense, man. And at the same time, they're having a good time. And, once you win and everything starts rolling, man, you can get everything rolling and get more guys to come in to experience Tennessee, man. It's nothing like the University of Tennessee. I try to tell everybody this. So I enjoy, coming back to the games. I enjoy what they're doing. I still know some of the guys that's still in the equipment room. So I love those guys to come back and see all those guys. And, man, it's just a blessing. My only wish is that I can get my nephew. He's 13 now, right? And I talk about him on my Twitter page, man. Listen, to me, it's scary. He's 13. He's already like 5'9", like 165. He played quarterback. And he happened to run it. He happened to see Hendon Hooker last week. And that's all he's been talking about all week. I say, I love it. So I'm praying on it. And I'm going to try to, see what I can do as far as, like, if he just stay healthy and get talented. His dad played for the University of South Carolina, so he got it on both sides. And, man, y'all get a chance to watch my Twitter and see some of the runs and the passes he's throwing already. So.
All right, throw your Twitter handle out there. What's your Twitter handle?
What is it? I think it's Heffney 5.
Heffney 5. All right.
Instagram is Heffney, El Jefe Andretti 23. You can put my name in, Jonathan Heffney. Y'all can find me. I got multiple highlights of my nephew because I want to get him out there. He has to be seen. And I got to get him in the orange.
All right. I got you. Hey, Matthew, pull that picture back up that you had a second ago. Is this the one you got in your garage? Because Jonathan, it looks like there's no reason for you to dive. Now, I want to tell everybody who don't remember the game, okay?
Can I move?
To the left of the official, there is an LSU player there. Jonathan had a reason to dive on that night on that pick because
it was Jamarcus Russell. I'm trying to see if I can flip my screen around. Hold on. Either way, I got it right here.
You got it. It was Jamarcus Russell. That's exactly right. That's the sideline view of it on what might have been the hottest night in Baton Rouge. I mean, I'm telling you, it was so humid and so hot that night, and Tennessee with the big-time win. Hey, Jonathan, listen, man, it's great catching up with you. We certainly appreciate your time. Thanks for your insight on the cornerback position, and thanks for sharing what your thoughts are on where the Tennessee program is going. And we'll see if the Vols can get it done Saturday night in Baton Rouge against the LSU Tigers. Great to see you. Great to catch up with you, man.
Guys, man, I appreciate it. Y'all have a good one.
All right, we'll catch up to you soon. Jonathan Heffney, the pride of Rock Hill, South Carolina, big-time special teams guy, good football player. Quick story on that 05 game, and then we got to get to a quick break. But they were working – that was the Katrina game. They're working on the stadium. The press box is not really done. We had to build our own broadcast table out of a sheet of plywood and cinder blocks, and Coach Fulmer told us to bring a cinder block home with us. So Tim Berry and I are pushing equipment out of that stadium and going around to the bus. And we got a big cinder block on there because I ruined a pair of pants, a shirt, and a tie that night building a broadcast table to call a football game. But that was a strange night and obviously an unbelievable win in overtime, 30-27.
Yeah. What a memory. Obviously talking about it almost 20 years later. So without a doubt,
Eric.
Great stuff
Appreciate
there.
it.
From Jonathan Heffney. All right, let's learn about this version of the LSU Tigers from the Bengal Tiger himself. Shay Dixon will join us next on the Rocky Top Rewind. Well, it's going to be the 4-0 Tennessee Volunteers traveling to the Bayou to take on the 4-1 LSU Tigers, and Shay Dixon of the Bengal Tiger going to join us here in just a moment. Oh, right now, Shay, what's going on, man? Thanks so much for joining us here on the Rocky Top Rewind.
Thanks for having me, Eric. How are you, Brent?
I'm doing good, Shay. I hope you're doing well. And let's jump right into it. What is Shea Dixon's take on this LSU football team after they rally for a win against Auburn, rally for a win against Mississippi State? What's your take on where this team is right now, Shay?
Yeah, and look, rallied to nearly go to overtime with Florida State, missed an extra point in the final, not final seconds, no time left on the clock in week 1. So 5 total games. They played Southern University here in Baton Rouge, first time they played an HBCU in week 2. And then they played New Mexico. So let's throw those 2 games out. Florida State, Mississippi State, Auburn, LSU started, I think they combined for 3 points in the first quarter of all of those games. So they start incredibly slow. And that's been a recurring theme now across the 3, teams they've played that have a pulse, or are on their level of playing in the SEC West or high level football. So they've kudos. This team will fight. Like if we saw it on the Plains, we saw it here in Baton Rouge against State. Went down 13-0, went down 17-0, won both of those games. So they'll battle, but I think just kind of right out of the gates, when you look at this team, it's clear that they took more transfers than anyone in college football, that they replaced every single coach on the staff minus one, the offensive line coach, that they've got a new head coach, a new defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator, special teams coordinator, strength staff. I mean, everything is new. And you can tell they're kind of putting that together and figuring out who they are, not just week to week, but often quarter to quarter and half to half. And certainly by far their biggest test is coming up next weekend.
Shay, you mentioned this team will fight. And again, that's evident. You lose by missing a PAT in the opening week and you respond. I know you mentioned Southern, but you respond in a good way. You knock off an SEC team 2 weeks later. And then here this past weekend, you're down 17-0 and you come crawling back and you win this football game. New coaching staff. How are they adapting to the new culture set in from Brian Kelly, the coaching styles of this staff? It looks like they're buying in because of that fighting mentality.
I like how you put that, Erica. Crawling back into that game is about how I describe what happened between LSU and Auburn. And look, I watched Auburn play Missouri the week prior, so I've seen 2 weeks of Auburn football in a row. It's not a great product. So for LSU to have to come crawling back in that game, I think just speaks to road atmosphere in the SEC and everything like that. But Eric, I think the biggest thing we've seen, and Brian Kelly's talked about this, is the buy-in is there. Like when everyone on the roster that wasn't a transfer portal guy got recruited by Coach O, in the prior staff, and they were close with their position coaches. Well, when you have a new head coach come in that you know nothing about, half these, 90% of LSU's roster wasn't really recruited by Notre Dame. Nobody was down to Notre Dame and LSU, not really many of them. So nobody knew Brian Kelly. Nobody knew what he wanted. And when you come in and you strip everything off the walls and you put all your signage up and you've got whatever your playbooks are, toss them out. We've got new ones. Whatever the motto is of how y'all structure practice to class, doesn't matter anymore. We're doing it a different way. That takes some real off-season buy-in. And this is a team that after 2019, where you can argue maybe, certainly one of the best college football single seasons of all time and teams of all time, they went back-to-back 500 seasons, which was the reason Orgeron got let go. But there was so much internal strife during that time. And look, y'all have covered multiple coaches where you could talk about internal strife and how it's ripping apart the team and whatever. So like it came to the reality, I think, to Scott Woodward, the AD, that this isn't going in the right direction. Guys were opting out left and right. The transfer portal heats up. Guys are leaving. So they go out and get Brian Kelly. I could have named you 50 coaches I thought were in the running. Brian Kelly wouldn't have been one of them. Like, I know we were in this one year, it seemed like Lincoln Riley and Brian Kelly, but not often are coaches leaving well-established, big programs to go coach at other well-established big programs. Like that just doesn't happen a lot. So I think a lot of guys were skeptical. Like, okay, this guy's coming in, he's won, but he's a lot different than us. He's never coached in the South before. And everybody worried guys about a culture fit. And I said it the whole time. They went back-to-back 500 seasons and the whole locker room's fighting and you're firing coaches left and right. They could use some new culture in that locker room. And I think they got it because now you look at it, guys aren't popping up left and right of they're suspended for this week, but we can't really tell you why. And it seems like academics are a much bigger priority. And for LSU, often I'm not saying this ain't the Harvard of the South, but you don't want to have to go through a season where, look, John Emery 2 years ago last year sat out the entire season on an academic suspension. He's a starting running back. So I think a lot of that got cleaned up, and they're really just building a base level of what they want this program to be, which is really rooted in accountability. And whatever the wins, losses look like this year, it's kind of just a product of more of a long-term investment.
Shay, when I look at this team offensively, it's like there's moments where it all comes together and it clicks, in Brian Kelly's system, and it looks really good. And then they have moments where it's kind of like they're still grasping it and trying to figure it out. But Jaden Daniels is a guy who makes plays and will figure out a way to make plays. Where is he health-wise? Where do you see this offense growing as you get into the back half of the season here?
Brent, I need you to come post on my message board because the posters seem to hate it and think everything is going wrong for him on offense. So thank you for the positivity, Brent.
Don't you think at times that there'll be a drive that they put together where you're like, this is what it's supposed to look like, and then they may go a quarter where they don't have another one, but there's times where it fits. You can tell that they start to grasp it. They just haven't done it consistently from what I've seen.
Right, and I think Jaden Daniels' experience helps out, right? I mean, he showed up on campus with 30-plus starts under his belt. So you got a guy who at least the moment was never going to be too big for him. He's not going to be rattled. Is he Hendon Hooker? Is he some elite SEC quarterback? I don't think anybody would say that. But again, as you build the foundation for Kelly, he's someone that can get you through this year, right? So I think the one thing LSU fans are watching right now, look, you've got Kayshon Boutte, Kayshon Boutte at Auburn had 2 targets, 1 catch, 4 yards. And it wasn't that Auburn was, blanketing him all night. It's just sometimes in this pass game, Daniels can get a little, quick with the decision of, hey, I made a read or two and now I'm tucking it and running it. Pass pro isn't that great. They've kind of started a makeshift O-line every week. They haven't really had any consistency there as they try to find the best 5. And then at running back, it's kind of been a committee thing. They just got John Emery back. I talked about that suspension that poured into this year with academics. So they don't have like a bell cow there. Everybody kind of splits reps at running back. But I think that people are curious, LSU fans of, and Brian Kelly's worked with Mike Denbrock, the OC, before. He was at Cincinnati this past year and had been there for a couple of seasons. And Cincinnati with Desmond Ridder had some good offenses. So you thought, okay, this will work. But a lot of what they like to do are like 2 tight end sets. They're throwing a lot to the tight end, throwing it to the running back. And I don't think at Notre Dame, in fact, I know this, at Notre Dame, Brian Kelly never had a receiver room like he's going to have almost every year at LSU. So how do you balance that with what they want to do offensively, which right now LSU basically has no tight ends. They have like 2 that were scholarship tight ends at any point ever. One is a true freshman, and he leads the team in targets, Mason Taylor. It's actually Jason Taylor, the Hall of Famer's son, out of Florida. He leads them in targets every game, 7-8 targets. He wasn't getting half that in high school. So a lot of people kind of feel like they're trying to fit all of LSU's pieces into what they want to do, which might be fine. But I think it kind of makes for some head-scratching moments offensively. Defense is great. Offense, you kind of still wonder, man, they don't seem to have an identity. And if this is the identity, they're not very good at executing it routinely at all.
Yeah, Shay, you kind of mentioned it right there. Last thing we have for you. Tell us about that defense. It starts up front, getting after the quarterback, B.J. Ojulari, one-time a Tennessee football commit. You get after the quarterback, but who else? What's going well, and why is it going well for LSU's defense? What can Tennessee expect?
Yeah, I'm not sure how much a neutral fan is going to have fun watching the LSU offense versus Tennessee defense, but Tennessee's offense versus LSU's defense should be good, entertaining football. I mean, Tennessee's got right now what statistically the best offense in the SEC. LSU has looked really sound. I mean, they held Mike Leach to 16 points, and they went up 13-0 in that game. They only scored a field goal between about the middle of the second quarter on. So they've adjusted really well in games. They had a couple busted plays at Auburn that Auburn gets up 17-0 early. Don't give up another point. Auburn really never even gets, once into the red zone from there. It's like I said, adjustments on the fly. The defensive coordinator, Matt House, who had been at Kentucky as the defensive coordinator for a little stretch before he went to the NFL. So he's got experience in the SEC. He knows how to call games at this level, and it shows. And they've got talent all over. Look, they lost Mason Smith, who defensive lineman, on the first play of the first defensive series of the season to a torn ACL when he was celebrating a play another teammate had made. And still they seem to just keep clicking. And every week they look a little bit better there. So Ojulari, obviously, you mentioned, is a guy to watch. I think that Harold Perkins, a 5-star freshman they signed, is every week playing a little bit more and more. He's been really good. And I questioned this approach, and I didn't know if it would work, but their DBs, and this will be the storyline to watch this week. LSU's DBs, largely beyond Jay Ward, who's been here for 4 years probably, are transfers. Greg Brooks came from Arkansas. Joe Fuchsia came from Arkansas. Then at corner, Colby Richardson was at McNeese. Mekhi Garner was here at UL over in Lafayette with Billy Napier. Jarek Bernard-Converse was Oklahoma State. So I just wondered, okay, you're literally grabbed like 6 or 7 guys from different levels of football from all over the country, and you expect that to work against some of the best passing teams in the country. And they did well against State. Now, State isn't Tennessee. It's a different brand of football of what they want to do. For me, this game really will give us a glimpse into how good LSU's defense is, how good the secondary is, because we know that Tennessee can move the football. We know they can throw it. Hooker's one of the best. So that's what I'm excited about. I think that Tennessee offense versus LSU defense is a storyline this weekend. And if you want to kind of put the microscope a little bit more into focus, I think it's how Tennessee's receivers and pretty much the passing game in general test the LSU defensive backs, which, again, have played well, but this isn't like a bunch of what you're used to, Derek Stingley's and guys like that running around out there who got recruited to LSU, got developed, and are now in year 2 or 3. It's a complete patchwork to make a roster work, guys. They got beat by Kansas State in the bowl game last year with 39 scholarship players. So This isn't the LSU team you're going to be used to seeing, and that's great news for Tennessee. Hey, I'll take, if I'm a Tennessee fan, I'll take that in an 11 a.m. kickoff, and I've got no complaints.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, the 11 a.m. kickoff is not a bad thing for Tennessee at all. Shay, hey, listen, man, we appreciate the time. I know the other storyline you're going to be following all week long is Jaden Daniels and all the updates on whether or not he's going to go or not go, what his health looks like. Sounds like he's probably going to be all right.
I think he'll be good. Yeah, sorry to answer that. He banged his knee onto somebody at the end of the game, and he was limping to the point where Brian Kelly basically said after, like, look, if his biggest tool, like 60% of what he does is run the football. So if he can't run, then they put in Garrett Nussmeier, the backup, and let him kind of go from there. And they just handed it off and ran it out. But I would imagine he's getting treatment, staying off it. And I've heard nothing to indicate that he won't suit up and be ready for next weekend.
Hey, Shay, man, we appreciate it. Good luck this week with all the coverage. We'll be looking forward to reading it. We'll catch up to you in Baton Rouge, my man.
Absolutely, y'all. Look forward to seeing y'all get down here safe. All the Tennessee fans travel safe and have a fun time.
All right. Thanks, Shay. We appreciate it. Shay Dixon covering the LSU Tigers for On 3. Does a fantastic job. You want to find out about the opponent this week, Eric, need to check him out and follow him closely there at his site there with the LSU coverage at On 3.
Yep, that site called the Bengal Tiger. Check it out this week as you gear up for Tennessee and LSU. We're going to gear up for a final little rundown here. The Rocky Top Rewind. Austin Price will join us next. We'll go back into the Rocky Top Rewind. Eric Kane, Brent Hubbs, and now Austin Price, fresh back from California. Austin, what's up, dude?
What's up? And I love the countdown.
New little wrinkle here on the
Rocky
Rocky Top
Rewind.
Hey, you were out on the West Coast, a little family vacation, but while you were out there, had a chance to stop by and check out Nico. 5 touchdowns in the first half. Josh Heupel, Joey Halsey in attendance as well.
Yeah, I thought Nico played well. He talked about it in our interview after the game, missed a couple of throws, but on the whole, I thought was, knocking some rust off. Remember, he missed the game before the bye week. So he had the bye week, which was the same week as Florida for Tennessee. For that, he missed that previous game because he had, got kind of cheap shotted by an opponent the week before. And so he was back and ready to go, and they rolled 54-7, and they've got their big rival game coming up in a couple of weeks against Downey, which is the same in the same little city there in Downey, California, which is just outside of Long Beach, just southeast of LA.
And people, when you watch Nico and you've seen him throw it, you've seen him throw 7-on-7s. When you look at him now, where he was 6-8 months ago, I know you said he was knocking off rust. For fans who haven't seen him a whole lot, or maybe haven't just watched a few highlights here and there, what do you like about his game? What do you think stands out most about what he does at the quarterback position?
Big arm, quick release. I love his quick release. Obviously everybody will point out that, he's got that little spin move, where he spins out of pressure, and, he's definitely mobile, but just a quick release. He gets it out of his hands quick. Any of those, kind of RPO quick slant game, and he brings it out humming. And so for me, that's kind of where I'm at is, just the quick release. I mean, he can throw it a country mile, big arm. He's not Joe Milton country mile, but I mean, he's as good as anybody else in this class of quarterbacks, which is really, really good as far as arm strength, but it's just the quick release. It comes out of his hand really, really fast.
All right, what are a couple other highlights going on in recruiting right now that you're keeping close tab on moving forward?
Well, I think, from the 24s, it's Mazio Bennett. He dropped out his top 8 October 1st. We expect him to, pull the trigger sometime mid-October, around October 16th. And I think Tennessee's in a great spot there, Brent. And as far as 23s, it's just, kind of see where they are. Aiden Williams, receiver. Alex Golish was by there to see him on Friday. That's someone that Tennessee was in on, kind of cooled on, picked up the pressure again on. He's committed to Ole Miss, but I think he's gettable. And, if you're a wide receiver in this offense, why not, right? Although, they throw it around at Ole Miss too. But, I mean, obviously the question is going to linger, how long is Heupel, or not Heupel, but how long is Lane going to be at Ole Miss? He'll be a target at Auburn along with Dion and, Hugh Freeze and several others when that job eventually comes open. We're at 5 now with Paul Chris getting let go earlier tonight at Wisconsin. It's crazy. He won 9 games a year ago, and Chris Lowe put out a tweet and compared it to when Philip Fulmer was fired, as far as like alma mater, won more than 70% of his games coming off. Philip won 10 in 2007. He lost, in 2009. Just very similar. I agree with that. David Hobbs is one to me. We'll talk about him every week. He's the biggest recruit on the board because he plays the interior defensive line. He visited Ohio State after they offered, and he went on up to Michigan today. Since he was up that way, I still don't see him going to the Big Ten. I still think he's going to be Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, one of those 3. And so maybe Ohio State can slide into the picture, but to me, like his relationships at Knoxville and Tuscaloosa and really Athens too are ones that are going to be more long term than the Ohio State ones. And then what else does Tennessee do along the defensive line? Keldrick Falk always has seemed kind of just like a forced relationship there for whatever reason. I don't know. It just it's not as easy. You can see the David Hobbs relationships with Tennessee. Falk, it just feels like, it's just different. I don't know how to describe it. It's just something it comes across to me. But I mean, Tennessee's in a good spot with a lot of 24s and a lot of 25s coming off last weekend. They should, right? I mean, how do you mess up a win and that atmosphere?
Austin, 2 positions to where you could potentially look at the transfer portal after the season's over, but offensive line, Bison Lang, official visit a couple weeks ago. What's the status there? And then who else on the offensive line names wise? And a running back. Tennessee's trying to add another running back. Khalifa Keith, currently a Kentucky commit. Tennessee hasn't offered yet. Could see that happening. His name, Deshaun Bishop. What else at running back?
Yeah, I mean, we'll start with the offensive line. Bison Lane going to commit November 8th. I think Tennessee's, the trendy pick there. I think they're in the best position to land him as of now. Tennessee went out and evaluated Elijah Page. A lot of people peg him for USC or Notre Dame. When looking at his recruitment, kid out of Arizona. Tennessee's trying to swing there, and we'll see what happens. With Michigan State struggling, does Stanton Ramil, take a look around? Kind of like Tamarion Parker did, commits to a Big Ten school, but the further you get away from committing, how much does that change? As for running backs, I think Tennessee wants to go with bigger backs. I mean, Khalifa Keith is one that, I think Tennessee would love to land. I think they'll offer in the next couple of weeks. I think they will go see him play live and in person, probably sometime in the next 2 weeks. And at that point, I think you'll probably see them pull the trigger, and then they'll see if they can swing him from Kentucky to Tennessee as far as on the commitment list. So, Deshaun Bishop's one that I think you still evaluate long-term. But, I don't think anybody's knocking down his door that you're not competing against anyone for him. If you go flip him, you're just flipping him from Coastal Carolina. I think, Keith Kidd is much more of a tall task because you're trying to flip him from another SEC school, but I do think it's very doable.
The Alabama game shaping up to be a monster weekend. Of course, Tennessee goes down to LSU first, but a number of these names we just mentioned probably going to make a return trip or, a trip to Knoxville for the first time this season. Who were some of those early names, and what should we expect from that Alabama weekend recruiting wise?
Well, I think Tennessee will obviously try to get Falk back up here. They'll try to get Tamarion Parker to come in. A lot of it depends on, what these kids have as far as do they have other obligations? I think that, they'll try to get Khalifa Keith to come back in as well. Like, why not? And he came in unofficially for the Florida game. Why not try to bring him back up? He's an Alabama kid. Makes some sense. And I think there's some potential there to maybe try to get him to come back in town. I'm interested to see if Aiden Williams shows up that weekend. And does anybody that Tennessee went and saw, like, Elijah Page, on Friday night, do they give Tennessee a look? And that includes Aiden Williams, Elijah Page, going the JUCO route. When do they get Elijah Davis in here for a visit? He continues to tell Tennessee he plans on visiting, that you're competing against Alabama for him. Tennessee's not going to bring in Arion Carter that weekend. He's going to visit for the Kentucky game. So I think that's a win, considering Alabama is one of the top schools for him. And, I don't think you want to bring him in when you're playing the Tide.
No, probably not. Here's the other thing, too, that's interesting to me, Austin. You've talked about this. We've talked about it on our podcast and everything else. The belief that December is just going to be wild with guys moving around everywhere via the transfer portal. You got five Power 5 openings right now. How much are kids starting, you think, going to start reaching out to other schools at those Power 5 places? How much are schools like Tennessee spending hours looking at not just guys committed to those schools, but their entire roster because of the movement that might take place in December?
Well, I think you have to, right? I mean, I've always said, like, Arion Carter to me is very important to Tennessee because you just never know if Georgia were to lose one of their guys, do they come after Jalen Smith? Look at Auburn. If they go out and hire the right guy and get a little bit of buzz, early December, don't you think they're going to swing at guys like Keldrick Falk, who's from their state, who's committed to Florida State, Sylvester Smith, who's from their state, committed to Tennessee? Like, the right guy there could potentially get some wins, in recruiting pretty quick if kids just truly want to stay home, Brent. So, I think it's very important to kind of, watch how this plays out. And I think it's important for your current players to be, talking to buddies they know that are at places that may have some change or have already seen change, because we all know that goes on. It's like faking an injury during going against an up-tempo team. It's a legal way of trying to recruit guys through your own players. I mean, every school does it. I mean, so I think ultimately, that's going to be a big thing. Is right now it's kind of identifying schools that may have some change or already have had change, players at those schools that could potentially enter the transfer portal and go on from there.
Austin, appreciate it, man. Recruiting never stops, and continual coverage over at Volquest.com. Recruiting and football throughout the week, right?
Yep, that's right. $1 for 1 year, Eric.
It's not going to last forever. $1 for 1 year. Jump on it while it lasts.
That's my favorite.
Also, like this video. Let's help it get 500 likes. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the Volquest channel on YouTube. But most importantly, as Austin said, $1 for 1 year. Join it while it's hot. Hey, Tennessee and LSU, continual coverage, previewing that matchup all week long at Volquest.com. Big thanks to Jonathan Heffney and Shay Dixon for joining the show today. And, of course, Austin Price. We will do it again next week. Same time, same place, 8 o'clock on Sunday for the Rocky Top Rewind.